The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Searcy. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hey everyone, it's Michael Searcy, and welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. I am thrilled to have Tom Searcy joining us. Tom, a big welcome.
Glad to be here. Good to see you again.
Yeah, we've known each other, Tom, for many years. It's funny how time flies. I don't know if it's been a decade or 8 years. I have no idea. It's been a while. I was almost going to say that you've known me since the time that I had hair. Actually, I think that was already in the current state. So, but I'm really excited for our conversation. For those of you joining us on the YouTube channel and seeing the video, you notice that Tom and I somehow ended up wearing a very similar blue shirt today. So we're looking like twins or brothers or something in one form or another. But so for those of you that aren't familiar with Tom, although many of you who have been in the consulting success community for a period of time, you've probably heard me talk about Tom or reference maybe some of his past books or work. But Tom is an author, a speaker. He's the founder of Hunt Big Sales. He's a recognized expert in large account sales, and he's helped his clients to land more than $18 billion in new sales with 190 of the Fortune 500 companies. And you've also written for places like Forbes, Inc., CBS, Money Watch, a whole bunch of others. And I thought where we could start today, Tom, is going back 2005 when you started Hunt Big Sales. So why did you start Hunt Big Sales?
I think like a lot of consultants, I was unemployable. I'd already worked at a number of companies. I'd started and run a number of companies. And at that point, I just did not want another boss. And I was tired of making other people rich. I had found somebody I wanted to make rich. That was me. But I backed into my consulting. I don't think I'm unique in this. I backed into my consulting practice. I was looking to buy a business or start a business. And I wound up with 4 companies that I knew hired me to do consulting. My wife and I are driving down the road. And I said to her, hey, I'm looking at buying a company or starting a company. And she goes, you've got 4 clients. You're looking to hire a secretary. Honey, I think you have a company. And that was the beginning of doing the work that I do now and have done for almost 18 years.
It reminds me, I remember many years ago when my wife, at that time, I don't know, girlfriend, or I don't even know if we were engaged, but she said something very similar to me in a different context, but it's the wise words of our better half or partners. I think also just kind of shows the value of an external advisor, coach, mentor, somebody that can look from the outside in. I mean, that's the value that consultants provide to their clients, something that was probably so obvious to others, but to you at that time, you know, you were just in it. And likewise for me too, I remember I was running 3 different businesses with my cousin and co-founder Sam all at one time. And my wife Rika said, why don't you just focus on like making one of them amazing? And I was like, not a bad idea. So you've actually kind of touched on the next question I had for you, which is how do you get your first clients? So you had 4 people. For those that are maybe earlier stages joining us, some will be already well into the development of their business. But for those that are earlier stage, they might be interested to learn, how did you go about getting those first few clients?
My first few clients were actually all a part of a CEO forum group. And so I was a CEO, they were CEOs, and they knew what I did and I knew what they did. And when I had stopped and when I had left the company I'd been running and I said, I'm looking to buy or do consulting or whatever, their answer is, I'll take you. And so they just said, until you get that done, why don't you come in and help me with that? So when you're networking, I'm a big fan of connecting. Networking makes me a little nervous, but if you're going to network or if you're going to connect at the CEO level. I know that sounds like, oh, that's really, really hard to do. CEO groups are where people write checks because they have CEO level problems. And I'm not a fan of RFPs. One of my books is called RFPs Suck. I'm not a fan of bidding out or paying by the hour. When you talk to a CEO, they pay big money to solve big problems. And they're usually the ones who know what those really large enterprise level problems are. So that's the key to the kingdom.
There's been, and I'm sure many listeners right now, or our clients or have been in our community, will just resonate with what you just said from the perspective of when clients often ask us or have questions about RFPs, one of the first things that I say to them is, listen, RFPs can work, but you need to be, number one, prepared that it can take you at least a year, if not 2 years, to even get to a place where you have a good shot at winning anything. But my first suggestion for you would be to read Tom Searcy's book. RFPs suck. And the moment that I say that to people, they just kind of laugh because what a great name for a book, right? Now, what would you say to somebody who goes, okay, Tom, like, sure, I understand that the CEO and that kind of level is where I need to be, but maybe they don't view themselves as a CEO, especially if they're a solo consultant. Any suggestions on kind of your experience on how somebody can get themselves into that position where they're surrounding themselves with more CEOs?
I think that the level of CEOs moves up as you work with a group of CEOs. Maybe they're very small. Maybe it's a small meeting group and et cetera, and they're trying to develop. You are a CEO. If you're running your own consulting firm, you're a CEO just like they are. CEOs have a language. They have a set of issues and problems and concepts. You can learn that if there's only 4 CEOs in a group and all 4 of them only have as many employees as you do. You start to talk about that and you move up in size and scale. The second thing is the issue is always the problem. What is the top problem that you're solving that's a CEO level problem? I always like to talk to people that problem equals price. When someone says to me, how much does it cost? I always say, well, let's talk about what it creates. What's the value that it produces? What is the scale of this? And how fast do you need to get it fixed? When we talk about that, then all of a sudden the calculation, what you're doing changes. I will tell you right now, we will never charge by the hour. Never, never, never. If you're charging by the hour, you're just the most expensive plumber. No, don't do it. And I know people are out there, and that's why I hate RFPs. RFPs commoditize you down into a measurement of income, and it standardizes what they consider to be the problem-solving ability. If you can do that, then you can send it out to a bunch of people and we can bid on it. I've done government deals, Fortune 500 company deals, and every time they say you're going to need to go through purchasing and procurement, my answer is I'll need to talk to a level up. And they said, why? I said, because CEOs and COOs and that level, how do you mean they invent money? They don't have a budget. They have a problem. And so if you don't have the problem that money will be invented for, I need to talk to someone else.
Okay. So you're hitting on a bunch of things here that I know everyone that's tuning in is going to want to know more about. And so I can't just gloss over and go to the next question that I intended to ask you. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. So take me through, if you could, in more detail. You don't have to name names, but the situation where you're talking to, whether it's a government buyer or a government kind of department or some large organization, and they say to you, yeah, Tom, like, we want your help. And maybe somebody higher up in the organization said that you're the person to speak to and hunt big sales. Let's connect you with our purchasing department so that we can kind of get you all set up. So your response is no. Like, I'd love to actually know what is your exact language. And then I'm sure there is pushback. How do you navigate that to get to the place where you actually end up speaking to a buyer that doesn't have to wrangle you through purchasing and allows you to actually charge full fees and have more kind of freedom and flexibility of how to navigate that?
My statement typically is are you using purchasing as to create me as a qualified buyer and approved buyer? Their answer is yes. Okay, fine. That's absolutely appropriate. If you're American Express or you're a large bank or you're a large contractor, fill in the blank. You have to get me approved as a particular provider. I say, great, that's completely appropriate. Will I be defining scope and all the works of outcomes with you, or will I be using procurement? And if their answer is, I'm going to do that, I said, okay, great. Will you sponsor the purchase or will you be handing it over to procurement? And their answer is, I'm sponsoring the purchase. And I said, okay, great. Just walk me through that process really quickly. How does that work? You and I come to an agreement and I put together a scope of work document that has a bulk fee for it. Then what do you do? And they say, well, I review it. I get the rest of my team on board with it and et cetera. And then I send to procurement. Okay, I understand that. What do they do with it? And said, well, they go out and get 3 bids. And I said, that's okay. I'm out.
You just say you're out at that moment?
I say I'm out. And they said, why are you out? I said, I just wrote the specs for you to go out and get the marketplace definition for what the issue is. I just wrote your RFP. I said, I just transferred intellectual property to you. It's okay if you want to do that, but I will charge you for what I just gave you. I'm a very direct person that way, but direct like you and I are talking about right now. Anybody that I am talking to at that level, they understand. I said, are you going to solve your problem because procurement says you can? Do you have to go, and I say this, do you have to go to your parents to get a sign off so that you can go on the field trip? And if you have to go to your parents to get the sign off for the field trip, then you don't get to go on the field trip. And like I said, I'm direct that way because I know how this game goes. They go to procurement, then I get shaved down, then they send it out to somebody else. And my answer is no. I'm not that big a company. I don't have 6 months to wait for you guys to go ahead and sort this out and then put me up against 1 or 2 other companies out there. And then we haggle price. No. And more than 9 out of 10 times, their answer is no, we want you. I said, great. Then you and I decide on what we're going to do and what it's going to cost and agree to it. Yes. All right. Then I need your signature slipstream through procurement into first invoice. And you know what, Michael? It works. The reason is I'm at the right level.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I appreciate you going into that detail. I think everyone will find that really helpful. What do you think gives you or has given you the confidence to come in with that level of just direct language and not worrying? I mean, I think some people might be concerned that they're going to ruffle feathers or they're going to lose that opportunity when you say, hey, if you want to, like, I've essentially written this, transfer this IP, I'll charge you if you like that. To some people, I think maybe like, whoa, wait a second. Like, the buyer didn't even know that you were going to charge them. And here you're saying you're going to charge them. So some might kind of view that as you're going pretty strong here, but it works, as you said. And I can see how you're raising yourself, you're bringing yourself and or maintaining that peer relationship. Where does that come from? Like, is that because you maybe didn't used to do that? Or like, I wonder, was there an experience, or just kind of give us a bit of background into what got you to that place that you're so confident so that others can maybe also work to become confident in that way?
Okay. So taking a step back, before I was a consultant, I ran 4 very, very fast growth companies. They either went 0 to 200 million, or they went from 10 to 100 million. And all 4 of them did that in less than 5 years each. Now, just so we're clear about that, that means I failed at a very rapid rate.
Yeah.
I made as many mistakes as I could. But what we learned early on, and I've stuck to it, is it's not who I sell, it's who I don't sell. I try and get rid of as many opportunities up front that are going to fail. People ask me, why is your conversion rate so high? It's easy. I don't sell to people who are going to say no. So all of a sudden it looks like I've got this ridiculous conversion rate. No, I don't. I have a ridiculous kill rate of getting rid of bad opportunities. And one of the things I know about opportunities is if I don't own up front the buyer's ability to say, yes, I can leave. And I'm not afraid to leave. See, most people look at their funnel and they look at the opportunities and they say to themselves, gosh, I need this much money and this is a great opportunity. If I get my foot in the door, then I'll get to additional projects and et cetera. And my answer is no. You have a big problem. I have a big solution. If you don't know your problem is big enough, then I haven't done a good enough job of working through your problem and understanding the negative impact. And it doesn't matter if it's rewriting an HR book. It doesn't matter if it is redesigning some of the CRM work. It doesn't matter if you're working on culture and et cetera. You have to define, look, here's your problem. Here's the net impact of your problem. And this problem needs to be solved in this period of time. So the only reason you set me out to anybody else is you don't have confidence that I understand and can solve your problem. This is an issue of confidence. So my question is, what things do you need to understand that I need to do a better job of explaining that will give you the confidence that you don't want to go through another process to find someone who's going to come in second place? So I'm very direct about that because I'm afraid that I'm going to spend time with someone who's going to say, we should do this later. We should do it smaller. I need to refer this to someone. No, I'm not interested in that.
So another way to kind of view this might be that you are being direct because it actually gives you the answer that you're looking for a lot sooner, right? So you're, rather than delay the potential inevitable of just a lot of like wasted time or finding out that things just get more complex or that somebody backs down or doesn't, you're just saying very quickly and upfront, like, here's the deal. Which way do you want to go? Do you want to make this work? And if you want to make it work, let's do it. And if not, all good. And then you just move on to the next.
Well, if I can give a quick example, we were talking to a company and they contacted us because of something that they'd heard or whatever good about us. And they said, well, we're looking at several companies. And we said, okay, well, tell me about the problem. And they gave us the $100 million answer. And we said, what are the other kinds of companies that you're looking at? They were looking at a CRM company. They were looking at a skill set management company. They were looking at somebody to reorganize their sales. And they were looking at us. We said, okay, you know what you just told us? You really don't know what your problem is. So our recommendation is when you figure out what your problem is and landing large accounts happens to be your problem, call us back. But you don't know, if you're looking at those 4 options, you don't know what your problem is. Now, 15 months later, they call us back and they say, we think our problem is we need to land larger accounts. Well, now we have a conversation that makes sense because those aren't bad solutions, Michael. They're not. They're just not good solutions for certain problems. And that's the other part of the confidence. The confidence also comes from, I know my lane. If you have these problems, then we're the right thing. We can do sales training. We're very good at it. It's a part of what we do. We can do systems interface. It's a part of what we do. So we do all those things. Number one issue, do you have big sale problems? Then I can look at the other things later.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. The other question that I had for you is you talked about pricing and the fee. And when a buyer says, how much is this going to cost? You really want to get to the heart of what is the value of the problem or the impact it can have for the organization. And also you said, how fast do you want to solve that? And I'm wondering, do you internally have a formula that your company uses to figure out the right fee for a given project? How much of that is art? How much is science? Is there an actual mathematical equation? How do you approach coming up with a fee?
So I shouldn't probably be telling you this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So it's just between...
Just so you know, Tommy, over 60,000 people that will be hearing this, but if whatever you want to share, I'd love to hear it.
All right. This is the hard part because I like you. So I want to give you the answer. So I'm going to give you the answer anyway.
I appreciate it.
Okay. So issue number one is we say, what is the problem that you have and what is the net impact as measured over the course of the next 3 years? We always talk about money. If you're redoing culture and et cetera, and you've got to solve the answer, no. You have to turn that answer into money. And I have talked to so many companies who say, well, it's not like that. It's soft expense and et cetera. My answer is no. Get help from people that are part of your podcast. But in the end, you need to be able to convert it to money. The second thing is that I need to look at the size of the problem. When people talk to us and they look at our fees are very, very high. I mean, they're not one of the top 4 consulting firms high, but they're very high. People say your fees are high. I said, I should be the most expensive consultant you've ever hired. And they go, well, why? I said, because I'm solving the biggest problem you've ever had. The issue is the size of the problem equals the price. Now, okay, you're saying, Tom, go behind the curtain and show me how you do this. So if we have to travel, if we have to leave town to go anywhere, it's double whatever our fee is. So whatever we would charge you on cost of goods sold, right? Consultant fees and et cetera. If we are doing it by video or whatever, we look at the value of a cost of one of our consultants that we contract with. We look at them between $500 and $1,000 an hour of cost of goods sold. Now, that's not what they receive. They receive good money, but because one of the things that we do for all of our consultants, we sell the deals. It's our brand. We close them and et cetera. When we just say to them, look, here's the client you're going to work with and here's the work you're going to do. And we're pretty good at that. So we look at the cost of goods sold from our consultant. We look at the cost of sale. Then we look at a multiple against that. And then we put in a buffer. Now, the buffer is not pure margin. The buffer is that part that says, you can call me anytime outside of the scope of this contract, and I will be your trusted advisor. Now, okay, so to everybody that I'm talking to right now, the interesting thing is that unlimited access has a huge perceived value and yet a very rare use. So when I say to you, I'm on your side and I want to do this, which by the way, we do, and different clients call us on different things. And some call us a lot, but when I say, look, this is the scope, we're going to develop this system inside your organization. We're going to train your people on how to use it. We're going to measure and build all the rest of this stuff in. And on your biggest deals, we want to be involved. When that happens, don't worry. I'm here 7x24. So that right there. So in answer to your question, I look at the cost of goods sold, and then I look at what my cost of sale is, which is pretty significant for anybody who's out there. We know it's significant.
Can you just define for those that are joining, how would you look at and what goes into cost of goods sold and the cost of sale? Just what are the components of each of those?
Okay, the raw licensing, if you're licensing materials or you're paying to anybody else, we happen to have our own materials. So we build in that. The cost of whoever's going to deliver that material, cost of the materials themselves, if there's something that needs to be done with that. Obviously, if you have to rent a facility so all that's a part of the cost of goods sold. Cost of sale is commissions that you have to pay, a calculation of time versus conversion rate as far as what it takes to close that, any what you would call referral partner or channel partner and what they receive, which sometimes is a double commission. Your salesperson gets a commission, your channel partner gets a commission, and we put in for ourselves marketing and advertising. All of the cost of sale goes into that. Then there's a G&A, which how do you run your office? What platform do you, all the stuff that we know about G&A. And then above that, hey, why don't we take home some money?
Right.
That's where the margin comes in. I don't think that my breaking out that is different than other people's accounting, except we talk to lots of people who they don't use that accounting. They just throw themselves out there for X amount of hours. Their ability to say, I'm available to you 7x24 throws away the value. When I say I'm on your team, and if you're in the middle, in my case, a big sale and an email comes in and you need to respond to it, call me, send me the email, we'll have the conversation. That decreases their feel that you're a one and done provider.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching Program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
Sure. Yeah, you're really partnering with them. As an example, let's say that a buyer or a new client, the value for them is going to be landing $50 million in new business per year for the next 3 years. So $150 million in kind of new value, large accounts, however we want to kind of define that. How would you go about applying? So you obviously have your cost of goods, you have your cost of sale, you have that. I mean, you have the multiple part, right? Which I guess that's kind of where you're thinking about the value component. But what some people struggle with is this idea of, well, I'm helping to create $150 million. And there's different formulas out there where some people say you can charge maybe like 10 times the ROI or 5 times the ROI or whatever. But in some cases, that might mean that if you're contributing 150 million in value, that your fee might be 15 million. And to some people, that seems like that's a massive, crazy amount. And I've had like Subir Chowdhury, I don't know if I pronounced his name correctly, but he talked on the podcast about landing multi-million-dollar deals and having a lot of confidence around that. But many people don't have that. So how do you think about that? If you were going into the situation where the value for the client is 150 million over 3 years, how would you kind of think about your fee in context to that?
Well, that's a great question. I will tell you, I've had a strong caution about taking a percent on ROI or on gross revenue or whatever else. And there's 2 reasons for it. One is I'm not doing the accounting. And so someone else is counting the money. The second thing is I don't know if their organization will implement the things that I bring to them along the way. And so that has to do with leadership and commitment and sustained energy and et cetera. And so what we do is we put together an overall program. We have a very systemic approach for installing our program and system and for coaching it along the way and doing all those kinds of things. And depending upon the size of organization and the number of people and the number of groups that we're going to have to do, we then install that overall system. Our customers usually come back and say, yeah, and I need something else. We do not negotiate on price. We'll negotiate on scale, but we won't negotiate on price. Price is price because all you're doing is taking away my margin. All my costs are the same. So we don't haggle. But point being is that you build that out and you have confidence in that. Now, there have been some very generous clients who've given us additional compensation above and beyond because they're grateful for what has happened. But you don't book on that. You figure out all the rest of it along the way. I'd love to go ahead and bill an ROI or percentage revenue and all the rest of those kinds of things. I helped a company close $2 billion contract and helped them close another $1.5 billion. Now, I received good compensation for additional programs over the course of the next 3 years. And I would say because they're a publicly traded company, it was a disproportionate amount of compensation, but it allowed them to push it through their purchasing process. So I recognize that the margin differential was to cover that which was not awarded. But it's $2 billion, it's $1.5 billion, $3.5 billion. Shouldn't I be flying a jet? No. The fact of the matter is no. I performed what I said I was going to do, and I knew that I didn't have to count their money to get paid. Now, this is me. This is me. Other people may be very good at that. And if they're good at it, send me an email. I'd like to get better.
Yeah. Well, we could talk more after. I have a few ideas, but no, I love what you're sharing here. So a question for you, Tom, what do you really see as the main differences or kind of distinction between, call it that larger account sale? And in your mind, or just inside of your company, what is the definition maybe of a large account? Does it start at 6 figures, or how do you kind of think about, first of all, a large account, a dollar or kind of currency perspective for kind of numerical? And then is there a big distinction, or what is the distinction between maybe just smaller account sales and large account sales?
Geez, Michael, do you have any other easy questions like that?
I told you, these are all easy, man.
Oh yeah, this is a layup. Explain to me the entire business model. Go. All right. So
wait till you see my advanced questions. Those are for next time.
For the next interview. All right. So I'm going to lay this out as completely honest and fast as I can. First thing is our target filter is companies between $10 million and $250 million in annual revenue. We like to see Davies beat Goliaths. We don't like to see Goliaths stamp on Davids. So that's an issue of choice. We get Fortune 500 companies that we help out every once in a while, but that's not who we talk to. Second thing is that these are companies that are looking to change the nature of their average sale from whatever that dollar amount is to deals that are between 2 times and 10 times the size of their average sale. They have a $100,000 average sale. They want $200,000 to $1 million sales. Third thing is that we're looking for people who want to double the speed with which they want to double the size of their company. They need to have at least 1 to 2 big sales already on their books. Big sales have a flavor, and you better like the way they taste. And if you don't, and we're your first one, it's hard because you have to make changes and adjustments along the way. When we work with those companies, because we don't work below $10 million in size and it's double along the way, we're also working with the owner. And when you get up to $250 million, you're working typically with the owner or a very high level manager, CEO that was brought in by the board. And so in that case, we're working on the biggest problems that they have. And it doesn't matter if it's culture or HR or finance. I mean, anybody who is on this podcast right now, I have seen almost every industry that's out there as far as professional services and consulting. Every one of them has a customer base, whatever their amount is, who has that larger problem. We look for people who've got big problems and they need to get them finished with or started on and hopefully completed as far as stage 1 within 6 months to a year. Now, installing a system like ours takes a long time, but they need to see early wins, financially beneficial wins within 6 months, or they lose their flavor for the effort. And I understand that.
And how does that fit into for you and your company as a consulting firm owner? Do you view it in the same way, meaning that for those that are joining us running consulting firms, whether they're a solo consultant or a small firm, is the opportunity the same for them? Meaning, should they also be thinking about larger accounts, bigger consulting engagements, or is that a real challenge for a smaller firm or even a solo consultant that they maybe should be kind of staying away from? What are your thoughts on that?
Great question. All you ask are great questions. I know I've said this is a great question. It's not my standard response. I don't say to interviewers, hey, that question sucks. I don't say that either. Here's the thing. Why does a $10 million client work with a company like ours? We are, let's just say, adult money. All right, to hire us. It's because they have a vision of being significantly bigger in a particular window of time. And so they don't look at us as a fee. They look at us as an investment. An investment has a clear outcome. So I would say to anybody who's on it, if you're a solo provider out there, there are people in your market space who have those sizes of problems. If you're a fractional employee, like you're a part-time CFO, I'd be really careful about that. I look at that as dollars per hour. You have 3 part-time jobs. You're going to run out of capacity very quickly just because of the hours that you can charge.
So in your mind, Tom, what's the difference in selling, call it $500,000, $500,000 deal or account versus, or even a 7-figure deal compared to $50,000 deal in your experience?
A department asks their vice president whether or not we can spend this money to solve a little problem. If I go to the CEO and I say, this is the problem, let's just say it's a fractional CFO. Just give me your typical person. We'll use that. Michael, do you have a typical profile?
About one of our clients, or you mean the consultants we work with, who their ideal client is?
Yeah, one of the folks that's going to listen to this podcast. Is there?
Sure. So, I mean, they might be, they'll be the founder of their firm. Maybe they have 3 or 4 or 5 team members. Some will be solo consultants. And let's just say that they're working in manufacturing, and, they're working with owners of manufacturing companies, maybe doing 5 to 25 or even 250 million, something along those similar kind of maybe even in size to your ideal clients, but in manufacturing. Let's take that as an example.
Perfect. And we've had a number of clients that are in that space. And so inside of that, what is the problem? Now, I'll just give you one of them. One of the problems is that this particular organization was on a buy cycle for a platform of a particular kind of machinery. And they were stuck in that period of time so that they could go bid elements that go into there. And so they had to break that cycle. And they were able to look at the equipment and say, you've just created a piece of equipment you will be paying back on issues of your warranty and et cetera at a rate greater than this. All they did was go look at the equipment and they said, look, this is the stuff that's going to break apart and here's how that's going to go. They put together an analysis that said, this is why it's going to break. They went to the CFO and asked for the opportunity to go meet with the head of engineering, met with the head of engineering, because you always got to go to the subject matter expert. And from that part, that conversation then opened up to a much larger dialogue about what are the parts that fail. Now, that's an example because it's all intellectual property. They're not making anything. They sell whatever the components are. But my point being is that if you are butts in seats programming or whatever, your dollars per hour. That's okay. You just have to go find a lot of people and you have to manage a lot of people. Maybe you're really good at that. But is it really the problem? Is that really the issue?
And Tom, what I think I'm also hearing you say here, just to try and summarize for the benefit of everyone, is that in order to land the larger accounts or just the bigger deals, it's really about being more investigative. It requires kind of more conversations, more looking at what are all the implications, what's at the core of the problem, what's really going on. Because without that, it's very hard to actually identify the true value of that bigger problem. And so then you're just looking at, if you're not doing that, you're just focusing on what you see, and the value of solving typically just what you see is typically going to be smaller and not as large. And therefore that's going to be that $50,000 deal, let's just say, as opposed to the $500,000 deal. Would that be accurate? Or?
Absolutely. I like to use this, and it's probably Game of Thrones was where I may have came up with it, but I like to say information is the coin of the realm in big sales. He or she who has the most information wins. And that's why that investigative process. And I'll tell you right now, you show up at a big buyer and say, hey, I just want to introduce myself and find out a little bit about your business and see what's going on. You are wasting their time. They are going to be aggravated because their answer is, you didn't come in and understand my industry, my competitors, the technology that's going on, the marketplace that I'm operating in. I'm now having to educate you. And if you ask the question, it makes me crazy. Well, if you had a magic wand and you could go ahead and change all that, what would it be? Or what keeps you up at night? I'd like to welcome you back to the year 2000. What a wonderful set of questions. Those are just so awful because it says that I don't understand your business. I don't understand your problems or issues. You should at the very least be able to ask relevant questions about, hey, there's legislation coming through in the next 18 months. What's your response going to be about that? Technology has shifted. What are you going to do? What do you think AI is going to do with your ability to accelerate your development? Whatever it is, you have the responsibility to be knowledgeable. And when you come in, to focus your questions to the customer in a way, or the prospect in a way that they say, hey, I can have a dialogue with this person. They really can be valuable to me. And that's a first meeting attitude.
Yeah. So the word that was just really sticking with me throughout this, I talk to clients a lot about, is if you don't go to that level of research or, information gathering and understanding, it shows that you don't care. And so I think one just very powerful way to differentiate yourself from all the other emails and LinkedIn messages, everything else that your ideal clients are receiving right now from people who clearly don't care because they haven't taken any time to really personalize anything or to show that they actually understand you and your situation. So by doing that extra work, not only are you able to demonstrate your knowledge, your expertise, right, your understanding of everything that's going on that's relevant to that ideal client, but you actually show them that you care. Yeah.
That's right. You've invested in them. There's an expression that a friend of mine taught me, and it is, you get sent to whom you sound like. If you sound like a director, that is where you will end up. If you sound like a CEO, that's where you will send up. And that's what happens because of scale of problem. I'll plug a book, which is our book's coming out. It's called The Secret to Big Sales, and it's using executive language to close bigger sales. Why? Because most people don't feel comfortable. They're intimidated a little bit. The bigger the company they're talking to, they're intimidated about talking to that C-suite. I don't think big words are what makes that work better. It's bigger ideas.
I want to ask you a question that's, I think, very timely for what's going on right now in the world as we're recording this, which is a lot of organizations, and we're hearing this from many different clients and just people that are, in the community here, which is budget cuts, or they're talking to buyers and people are hesitating, they're delaying. And I'm wondering how you are counseling your clients and what you're maybe even just doing in your own company right now, Tom, to deal with some of that, maybe, hesitation or just the real kind of, eagle eye on budgets and just what's happening given the state of the economy and the world right now.
Number one, if you're talking to somebody about budgets, you're talking to the wrong level of person. People at the senior level invent money because they're investing it to solve a problem. So budget cuts are something that's managed at a managerial, HR, and CFO level. Problem solving is measured at the C-suite level. And so your issue is you have to talk to the highest level person about what is their highest level problem.
That's about the budget. And then what would you say, even with, let's say you are talking to the CEO or owner, but what if there just is more hesitation in their mind right now? So I'm wondering, is there anything that you're doing inside of your own company? Are you experiencing any of this as you're talking to prospective buyers? And are there any changes that you're making right now, given some of the, call it kind of hesitation that the people are maybe demonstrating now more than before?
we're benefiting from some of the choices that are being made because there hasn't been an occasion in which people need less revenue. And we are a fast to growth revenue company. That's what we do. But this goes back to the issue of problem. See, when you lose a whole bunch of people, you're Microsoft or you're Facebook or fill in the blank, stuff that we see coming through the media right now. They got rid of all those people, but they didn't get rid of all those problems. So, as a matter of fact, they lost the resources to get rid of them. What's interesting about income statements is that when you have personnel and you wipe that out, it makes an enormous amount of impact. When you back sell consulting services in to solve problems, what do you look like? You look like a very small line, refilling in what was a very big line. So focus again and again on the problem, because people who lost 7,000 people, 10,000 people, 100 people didn't lose the problem.
Right. I love that. All right. So we're going to wrap up here in just a couple of minutes. But one other question I had for you here. So let's say that you're sitting down with a friend who runs a consulting firm and she really wants to start landing larger accounts, bigger deals, bigger sales, bigger clients. What advice, maybe just kind of a couple of points, what would you counsel her on doing? What would you say that she should focus on first just to get started?
First step is all of the people, all the companies they've worked with that have had less than a 50% conversion rate. So industry, size of company, characteristics, whatever. These are the people you don't talk to. Now, yes, there's always an opportunity in there. You could hit a home run, but right now, let's go to the people that we know in those industries. Now, let's just say we have that target filter. The second thing inside of that is, what is the message that the senior level person, what is their biggest problem that they have? It's actually not your product and it's not your service. It's their problem. So you have to tailor your product and your services to that problem. The third thing I would say about that is you need to determine how you're going to ladder up, what we call ladder up, which is if I'm going in the door of, let's say for the sake of typical, I'm going in through the director of HR and I'm moving up through the vice president of HR and I want to get to the CEO. There are what we call a layer cake. There are 3 layers of concerns and each one is a little bit different. So you have to be looking at what the problem is for each of those and then layer cake up or ladder up to the next level. And that typically has to do with the nature of those problems. That's in the book, but it's also kind of a core idea that you need to have out there. I would say that the next piece to that is, how are you going to source those leads? I will tell you, knocking on doors and cold calling and etc. People tell me it works. Okay, if you say so. And if you've got a system that works for you, I think you should share it with everybody. I think it is inefficient as a system. You're an expert. Go to places that experts are needed. Now, there's places like LinkedIn, and there are places that experts are needed, like podcasts like this, where Michael's been asking me nothing but expert questions. There are places where you can have podcasts, and you may say, well, what's podcast? How do we get advertised? How do you get everything else? Start out with your current customer base and your past customer base and just send the podcast out to them. Inside of less than 12 months, they have another problem. One of the things that I believe is true is that when you sell success to someone and deliver success to problems, your customers or past customers never run out of problems. If you're a trusted advisor, you may reach them out a year later and go, ding, had an idea. I had something I thought was relatively valuable to you and etc. I wanted to talk to you about that. Now, people don't do that as often as they could or they should. It's not about selling a product. It's about finding out where they are in their business and what is the problem that they're dealing with right now. So those would be my first 3 things that I would say to any consultant that's out there.
Those are great. And one quick follow-up I have on that, Tom, is I think people wonder, what have you found is the best way? So let's just take this friend of yours. She goes, yeah, okay, but I don't know the biggest problem right now that CEO has. How would you counsel her to try and find that out?
Great question. Another one, Michael. I would say first, follow the money. Can you define the problem that a CEO or CFO, CRO, vice president, fill in the blank has that is about money? So if you're selling soft benefits, you're going to have a hard time in today's economy. You need to translate it to a financial number. So I would start off with what is the problem and how much money does that problem cause? If you feel to yourself like you don't have all of that number, go spend time with more of the people that are in that industry that you know, friends that you've developed in, et cetera, and calculate out. One of the interesting things I like to throw out that we think this has as much of an impact as this. What's the number you see? 9 times out of 10, they have a bigger number than you do when I'm talking to a prospect.
So the conversations part, I think that you just mentioned. So if you don't have access to that information right now, you just need to get out and talk to more people that are in the right places that can help you to formulate and get clarity around those pieces. Tom, you and I could keep talking for many hours here, but I know we both got to hop off. So first of all, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast here today. It's always a real pleasure to speak with you. Your book is not out yet, but it might be out by the time that the podcast goes live. We will certainly start sharing that around and probably on social and whatever other places with clients and so forth. But can you just tell us again, for everybody listening and watching, what is the name of the book so they can try and find it on Amazon or wherever the book is going to show up?
It's called The Secret to Big Sales, and it's using executive language to land big sales. And if you want to reach out, we're at huntbigsales.com and be happy to be helpful. We do exactly what we tell everybody else not to do. We bring in some free consulting, but you get a chance to have conversations like we did today with Michael. I'm sorry, we like to see Davids beat Goliaths, and it's just an addiction. So if you've got stuff and you want to talk about it, reach out and we'll do what we can to help you.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, Tom, next question for you, which was just where should people go? So again, everyone, huntbigsales.com. Look for Tom's new book. And Tom, again, thanks so much for coming on.
Michael, thanks so much. Really enjoyed it. Hope we can talk again soon.
For sure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.